Jared, yeah, you're in your hoodie. I know. What are we doing?
Well, I was about to go to bed and then you're like, we need a film for YouTube. So we're doing it. So what we're looking at tonight is, or today, depending when you're watching it, is connectors for the Sur Ron. So you're probably familiar with the Supra connector. You would have noticed this gets pretty hot when you're running a high power tune. I've always seen it run at fairly safe levels, but I think it's just worth upgrading. I've had a lot of issues where just dirt and muck gets in the connector and then it literally welds itself together. So that's something I'm looking at preventing. So I'm changing connectors tonight on my battery and my batteries and my Sur Ron. So I'm going to run you through a couple of options, what's available that I know of. One that's really ridiculous, but is actually rated for the purpose, and yeah, what we're actually going to use. So yeah, stick around. Okay, first option off the rank is this little beauty here called the QS8. Basically, the Q is the style of connector and the S stands for spark, so it's an anti-spark connector. So this is larger again than the Supra connector, so I'm just going to take this apart really quick so you can physically see. So you can see this is the connector that your 200 amps or 200 amps plus goes through on your Sur Ron. It's got a tiny little well here to solder with and a tiny little connector. The connector literally will fit inside a QS8. So the QS8 is a much better connector. It's larger in every way. It obviously couples, so you've got a male end and a female end. The connection of these is quite tight to pull apart. If anyone's familiar with drones, they look very much similar to a large XT60 or larger than the XT90. And essentially they go together the same. And with that in mind, normally those connectors are very tight the first few times you use them, and they do loosen up after a while. So I know it's tight now, but I think it will be a better move in the future. Plus with the anti-spark property, it doesn't spark when you put it together. So you don't really need to turn your breaker off essentially when you plug your bike in every time. The other one, which is actually rated for the application, is this huge QS10. So if you look at these together, you can see the physical mass of this thing, and it's huge. Basically, this is rated for 300 amps continuous, which is kind of what we're not going to run 300 amps for 1 minute. If anyone doesn't know what a continuous means in electronic terms, it normally means for 1 minute. So, but it'd be nice to have a connector that isn't hot. The Sur Ron cables aren't physically this large, so that's something we'll look at upgrading later. And I think down the track, with a different battery, I do think I will be running this connector. But for now, with the standard Sur Ron wiring and what we have, this is going to be our option. Yeah, so let's bang it in. Okay, so bike's obviously the easy part. There's no voltages there. Probably just make sure you discharge the bike, leave your headlight on, turn your key on before you do that connector, just so you discharge all the capacitors. So with the battery in mind, obviously we've got 72 volts plus, or 82 volts if you're fully charged, or 84, whatever you're charging up to, I suppose. Basically, there's voltage physically on this connector, and it's doable to do this, what I would call live, but I think in all safety, we've contacted eBMX at 9 o'clock at night, and they've written back to us and allowed us to turn off the BMS in this. So we'll quickly jump on the app, turn the BMS off, and we'll check it physically with a multimeter, preferably one that works and you've tested, just to make sure the voltage is actually turned off here. And I'll quickly run you through that procedure, how you do it. So essentially there's a little button on the side of the battery. You can go on your device list, you can physically push this button on the side, and you should be able to connect physically to the battery. So if you have multiple batteries and you're not sure you're connected to the correct battery, probably a good way to do it is to check the voltage readout on the BMS app. I can see this screen here says I'm 55%. These are normally close, then never perfect. So, and according to the Ant BMS app, I'm on 60% state of charge, which I know that's going to be close enough. If we go into control, we can actually turn off what we call, once I find the thing that I want, there's what they call charge MOS, which stands for charge MOSFETs, and discharge MOSFETs. So we want to turn them off on this battery, and we should physically see the screen go out. And that is it. We're dead, and we're going to check it with the multimeter now. Obviously, when you're testing this, make sure your connectors don't, or the ends of your probes don't touch. So I've got 4.78 volts, which would be a monitoring voltage, which means that this is off. So before, when that was on, we would have had excess of 72 volts. So we're safe to basically remove this connector. I still don't want these cables to short, so I'm going to be careful, but we are safe to basically rip this off and put a new one on. So if you're not sure how to remove this connector, basically they clip either side. You can try get this in here if you can, or if you can't, another way you can do it is just be pretty rough and just get your pliers and physically pull this off. What should happen is these should be able to slide forward like so, and that will then allow us to physically get our soldering on here, desolder this, pull this off, and then we'll get the maximum length that we need. So we'll do this one first, and then we'll do the positive first, then we'll do the negative, and yeah, we'll go from there. Probably one thing to mention as well is have a good soldering iron to do this. I've got this little gas job here that's rated for 125 watts. So let it heat up for a while. Make sure it's nice and hot before you start this procedure.
You know those words, they hurt me. You'd found out what made me angry, then use it to your ability. Now you're trying to avoid me. You're the big problem here, a bully to many for so many years. Now shut your mouth, close your ears. Never learned your lesson and nobody cares. That's what you're here for.
Another cool little trick that Truett actually taught me is that because you get these things so hot, it's good to actually physically put them together so that they can support each other. So we just want to, you'll see there's markings physically on here. There's a positive and a negative. So we're obviously doing our positive first in this instance.
You hurt me and do it all over again. You ruined my childhood. You hurt me and do it all over again. You always made sure I was last. Never was anyone's friend in class. You always seemed angry and mad, but I know deep down you are so sad. You are so sad. Happy people don't do shit like that. So stop dragging me down. So stop dragging me down. That's what you're here for. Here to make me miserable, I know. You get joy out of it. You hurt me to call me the same names again. You know I never.
So if you don't know what a hoodie is, it's basically a really long hoodie that you wear to bed. But yeah, I got out of bed to film and show you how to put a plug on your battery, nice and safe. Once again, just real quick, the dangers are voltage. Make sure you have your BMS off. Make sure you've got a multimeter that works. Make sure this is dead. Otherwise, you could potentially blow yourself up. Do not do this with a bypass battery at all. Definitely not recommended.